So we're going to start now the process of accessing this power that will change our lives. And it changes our lives so dramatically. And it's one of the reasons I think to a lot of us AA is so confusing is it doesn't match up what we would imagine it should say and suggest. It's funny, you look at all the sections in the book that tell us exactly what we need to get closer to God, and it has very little to do with actions that are designed to move us closer to God. It's almost actions that are designed to move us away from ourselves. It's like you want to grow God by shrinking you. It's I get closer to God through self-reduction. My grand sponsor, Chamberlain, used to say, God deplores a vacuum. You don't have to find God. You just have to shrink you and he shows up. And we're going to start this process of self-reduction, this process of accessing the power. On page 60, right after the three pertinent ideas, it says, being convinced of these three propositions, which is really the essence of step 1 and step 2. And I think most of us only have two problems with step 3, and that's step 1 and step 2. You got step 1 and step 2. Step 3 is not a problem because the word decision comes from a Latin word, scisere. It's the root word of the word incision when a surgeon cuts into a patient, or the word scissors, where they cut. And when a decision is where all the alternatives have been cut away. If you are alcoholic, which means you have a terminal fatal illness, you cannot stay sober no matter how much you try. You're going to relapse yourself to death, and you can't manage your own life. You've tried everything. There's no human power. There's nothing. You're basically screwed. There is either something to abandon yourself to that is a power greater than yourself, or what's the point? You might as well just go. The book says, go on to the bitter end, blotting out the tolerable situation as best you can. Or to start turning towards the accessing of this power, which is basically turning away from you. So being convinced of the three propositions, step 1 and step 2, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that? And just what do we do? When I was fairly new, they got me praying. I don't want to. I'm doing it, though. I'm doing it. I'm doing whatever they ask me to do. I'm just doing it. I don't do it with enthusiasm. Half of it doesn't seem like a good idea, but I just do it. And isn't that what surrender really is? How do you know if you're surrendered? Because you feel surrendered? No, because you act surrendered. What's surrender look like? Look at a movie. You see, in war movies, you'll see people surrender. You'll see people pinned down, and they're going to be dead, and they have no choice. There is no alternatives. All the alternatives have been swept away, and they decide to surrender. And what do? The first thing they do is they throw down and abandon every single means to defend themselves. Their guns, their knives, their hand grenades, their pistols, their rifle, everything, until they've rendered themselves utterly defenseless. And in a humble manner, they sit down and they wait to be told what to do. And they do it. You cannot be surrendered and defended at the same time. Think about it. Imagine a guy in a war movie. He secretly has a pistol in his belt, and he's going like this. If they find the pistol, they're going to kill him. He has to surrender unconditionally. That means I can't go to God and say, here's my life, and then immediately start managing it and defending myself. It's a farce. It's a farce. One of my favorite definitions of an agnostic, I got this from Charlie. I used to travel with these two guys, Joe and Charlie, and Charlie used to say something I thought was amazing, considering that action is the magic deal here. He said one definition of an agnostic is a guy who believes God's running the universe, who talks like God's running the universe, and acts like he's running the universe. How many of us get down on our knees and we'll say the third step prayer, get up off our knees, and we're in our head in the control center, immediately worrying about the day, figuring our lives. Kind of makes us hypocritical. It's a facade. Because the problem is I can't carry out this decision unless I follow through with the rest of it. Too full of me. And then once I've, even getting through step 9, is that the reoccurrence of ego, the reoccurrence of self, it's continual sweeping me out of the way. Continually pushing me aside. What I want, what I believe, me just pushing me aside. So it says the first requirement. Oh, I want to tell you a little story. So I'm new. I'm praying. I don't believe in God yet. And I'm praying, feeling like a hypocrite doing it. And this guy corners me after a meeting one night, and he says, this guy Joe says to me, he listened to me share in the meeting, and he came up to me, he said, kid, you need to take step 3. And I, looking at the steps on the wall, and I looked at step 3 and I read it, and I said, Joe, I can't take step 3. He says, why not? I said, well, the truth is, Joe, I don't know if there's a God or not. I don't know if I don't know. He said, you don't have to believe in God to take step 3. I said, well, it's sort of implied we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. I don't have any of that, Joe. And he said, you don't have to have that to do step 3. He says, I'll tell you what. He said, kid, I'll make you a promise. He said, if you'll turn your will and your life over to this chair, and he points to a chair in the Alano Club, he says, I guarantee you an instant miracle. All right, Joe, I turn my will and my life over to the chair. What's the miracle? And he says, the miracle will be your life's no longer in the hands of an idiot. And I didn't even get mad. I guess I was surrendered enough to go, yeah, that'd be right. Yeah. Because, if you have any clarity of mind at all, you kind of get it, don't you? That if you stepped out of yourself and had been watching you, as your loved ones and family have been watching you, drunk and sober, the last few years, how could they come to any conclusion other than whoever's making decisions for this person is out to destroy them? And yet it never looks that way to the justifying mind of a chronic alcoholic. I've got a million excuses and a million stories I tell myself to make the most bizarre, selfish, self-gratifying, self-seeking behaviors seem plausible and logical. I've had some great teachers in AA. There was a guy, Dale, when I was fairly new. Dale died of cancer. He was a great member of AA. And Dale got in my face at a couple years sober one time, and he said to me, he says, listen, you like me. He's a gruff guy. He said, listen, kid, I'm going to tell you a couple things that if you buy, it's going to save you a lot of pain and a lot of grief over the years. He said, kid, I want you to know that if you're explaining something, if you're defending something, if you're justifying something, if you're rationalizing something, kid, I want you to know you're wrong. Because you never have to explain, justify, rationalize, or defend what's right. That was over 30 years ago. I have not found an exception to that yet. It is only when I'm squirming through self that I have to explain myself to myself or to you, that I have to defend myself, that I have to justify myself, that I have to gratify myself. One of my dear friends passed away a few years ago, Don Pritz. Don used to say, whatever you're doing, just simply pause and say to God, hey, God, would you go with me on this one? I tell you, you ask that question on some stuff, you're not going to get a good answer. But if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, God's on board. He's right with you. You know that. You know, inside me, deep down within me is a thing, this spirit of God, is this sense of God, is this consciousness of God, the great reality. And in and with that is is what some people might call a moral compass. It kind of knows. The problem is, half the time, I don't like what it's telling me. Self-gratification is louder, screams louder in me than the still small voice of God. My natural inclination and drive towards self-grandizement and self-gratification is a stronger, more seductive pull within me than my moral compass. But all of us, unless you have some grave emotional mental disorder, all of us, if we could be quiet within ourselves, can ask ourselves certain questions, and we kind of know. We kind of know, I don't always know what God's will is, but I always know what it's not. But I don't want to know sometimes, especially when it involves what I want to do looks very exciting. God's will never looks exciting. It never looks like God's will God's will to me looks like the merry-go-round. My will looks like the roller coaster. You know what I mean? It's more seductive. So the first requirement is that I be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. And now it's going to start walking me through some painful observations of myself. And my sponsor, when I was new, had me read this and reread this and reread this, page 60 through 63. And I'm ashamed to tell you, I read this and read this and read this and could not see myself in it for a long time. I could see you in it very clearly. I could see there were some people in AA that were just what they're talking about here, but I couldn't see it was me. And so I have the guys I sponsor read it in the first person. To take a pencil and run a line through all the pronouns and read it and change it to the first person. So when it says that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives, that probably no human power could relieve our alcoholism, I have it changed to that I was alcoholic and I could not manage my own life. That probably no human power could relieve my alcoholism and make this all about me. And it's funny how it starts to make a little more sense. Read in the first person, I start to connect with it a little more. And I'm going to read it in the first person. The first requirement is that I be convinced that my life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Am I convinced of that? That's a hard thing to become convinced of, really, because the ego is endless in its maneuvering to justify its own position. So what I do with the second half of step one, the same thing I did mentally with the first half of step one. And we all have done this. We all had times in our drinking where we'd go out to drink and we didn't get arrested. We didn't get in trouble. Matter of fact, it was amazing. We hooked up with someone. It was very cool. And I may have 50 times where it's horrible, but I'll look at the one time that was very cool and I'll keep looking at that and staring at that, justifying the next time and the next time. But that doesn't mean that I can drink, I can control and enjoy my drinking. Just like I can willfully run my life on self-will, and once in a while it kind of works out. 50 other times I've stepped on other people's toes, I feel horrible, I've lost the job, I ruined the relationship. But once in a while it works out, and I'll stare at the one time it worked out to justify my need to manage my own life. But even a broken clock's right twice a day doesn't mean it's telling time. So, am I convinced that my life run on self-will, what self wants, on ego gratification, self-grandizement, self-justice, that any life run on self-will, what self wants, can hardly be a success. on that basis, the basis of me running the show, me running my life on what I want and what I yearn for. What do you want? Do you ever ask yourself that? What do I really want? More? More of what? What do you got? More. I heard a story years ago that I really identified with. It was embarrassing because it was not a good depiction of me, but it was I aligned myself up pretty good with it. This friend of mine who had a grandson who was about 3 years old, I think. The parents were very wealthy, and they couldn't, they loved the kid, and they just spoiled the kid a little bit. One Christmas, they went out and bought the premier toys, 28 packages under the tree for this kid, of all the most amazing toys out there, and all kinds of stuff. And Christmas morning, the kid's tearing into these packages. And he opens, oh, this is cool. And he pushes it aside, opens another, oh, this is amazing, pushes it aside. And he gets to the last package, 28, package number 28, present number 28, tears it open, looks at it. And then after he looks at it, he pushes it aside, he starts crying. I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't get what I wanted. The parents don't get him anything. They said, well, what do you want? I don't know, but I didn't get what I wanted. Oh, it's my life. That's the story of my life. What do you want? I don't know. I just didn't get it. It's like, what do you want? I just want. I want. What? I don't know. I just want. I have never found the off switch to my wanter. It just wants. It wants. I can't shut it off. Now I could get drunk enough sometimes. I'd turn the volume of it down. But I could channel it into all it wanted was alcohol, but I couldn't shut her off. Can't to this day. Cannot to this day. Well, that's a hard thought, isn't it? So what do you do? What do you do if you can't shut down the wanter and it just wants? The book says the proper use of the will is to align it with God's will. I can't stop wanting, so I have to want what He wants. That's why we claim a purpose here in Alcoholics Anonymous that is above and beyond ourselves. We claim some principles that are above and beyond ourselves, and we start to serve this purpose and these principles, and ultimately, indirectly, this power greater than ourselves. It's a program of self-forgetting as I push myself aside and start living to help God's kids. Primary purpose in Alcoholics Anonymous, not just to stay sober. So that's a given. You're not going to help anybody unless you're sober. And help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. It's my purpose. Why did you go through all the hell? Why? Why did you have to suffer and torture everyone you ever loved? Except that it becomes useful. It becomes a source of power. We are given something that the gentleman, the very nice doctor who stood up here can't do what you and I can do. He could go back to school and get 4 more doctorate degrees, and he can't do what we can do. What is that? And that's to be talking to a new man. And if I've worked the steps, and if I'm clear with me, and I'm properly armed with information about myself, in other words, I get it. I get it all now. I'm awake. That I can go inside myself to a place where I will understand you in a way that nobody has ever understood you, because you are me. Because you're me. And I will get you, and I will be able to talk to you like someone could have talked to me when I was in your shoes. And that's why sometimes old-timers are startling when you're new. They'll say things to you like, you think they're reading your mind. They're saying stuff. How does they know? I can't, the epiphanies that were endless when I was open to them and knew. where people would be, I'd go to meetings and just one right after another, people would be blowing my mind, the things they'd say. They're talking about inner stuff with me that nobody, I had years in therapy. Nobody ever talked about that stuff. And this therapist didn't talk about it. They didn't know how to talk about it. But you did. You knew yourself and you knew me. I think that a good 12-step call is that I'm really talking to myself here. I'm talking to the me that is in you. The bar by which we set all 12-step work on is in chapter Working with Others. It says we try to put ourselves in the place of the new man and approach him the way we would like to be approached if the tables were turned. In other words, I can go to a place where I get inside. I'm in your skin. I know how ashamed you feel of yourself. Your mother and father don't get that. Oh, I get it. Because that's me. That's me. I know you've had thoughts where you wished you had the courage to kill yourself. I know there have been mornings you woke up and you wished you were dead. I know the loneliness. Powerful stuff. And we have something, Carl Jung talked about something. And I think we have it here. It's in a very unique form. Carl Jung believed in the collective unconscious. And in a sense, it could be the God within us that radiates through all of us. But it's also, when it comes to alcoholism, there's something that is inside of us that's inside of all of us, and there's a connectedness to us. And you know how you know that? Have you ever sat in a meeting and you heard a man share or a woman share something you've never heard before in your life, and yet as they're saying it, deep down within you, it resonates with a rightness, as if at the same time you've never heard it before, and yet at the same time you've known it all your life. It's uncanny. And that is part of our collective unconscious. That is our ability to go to a place within inside us and tap the things that are inside each other. It's a powerful, powerful thing. And it is part of the result of this awakening that happens. So the first requirement is we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we're almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live by self-propulsion. And this is a beautiful analogy. Bill compares us to an actor. He says that we're like an actor who wants to run the whole show. Now, we're not talking about the star of the show or the director. Matter of fact, it doesn't even say the guy has a speaking part. It's just an actor, just one guy in part of a large company that wants to run the whole show. He is forever trying to arrange the lights. He's always telling the light guy how he should do his job. You should have those spotlights more on me, I think. He's always trying to tell the ballet people how to do their job. He's always telling the scenery and the rest of the other actors, the rest of the players, how to do it. You ever worked with someone like that? It's always telling other people how they should do their, not the boss, just another employee. They're always telling the other people how to do. If only his arrangements would stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased and life would be wonderful. I'm embarrassed to tell you, I read that and read that and read that and read that, and I could not see that was me. I could see it was you. I could go to the business meetings in my home group and really see how it was a lot of you trying to run the whole show. I couldn't see it was me. And yet, isn't it odd that I could go to work and one of the other employees would be acting like that and I could see it clearly in him, and yet the day before or the week before, I'm the guy trying to run the whole show, and it never occurs to me that I'm doing the same thing he did, because when he's doing it, he's trying to control things. He's trying to run the show. When I'm doing the exact same thing, I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to make things nice here. This is the right way. I'm not trying to run nothing. This is the right way. Let me explain it to you. This is the right way. And I can't see it. And then God's grace sometimes works through pain. It's how often I have to hurt a little bit to be open. And I had one of those days one day. I was sober a little while, a year and a half or so, 2 years, I don't know. Sometime my first couple of years. I was working as a cashier in a retail store. And it was one of those mornings where you just get up a little bit angst. Did you ever have mornings like that? You don't know why, you just wake up a little bit of edge to you. And I woke up a little edge that morning. I went to work. Had a lot of stock work to do. So I'm busy. I get obsessive with stock work, like I gotta get it done. And these customers are coming in. Self-centered customers wanting attention. And I'm busy with this stuff. I'm just polite, don't say nothing, but I get a little angst up over it. It's like tightening up a spring in the pit of my stomach. People annoying me, and the other employees are not doing anything. They're drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes, and I'm doing all the hard work here. Nobody's even paying attention to everything I do here. The boss is in and out of there. He doesn't even notice that I'm doing it all here. They're taking advantage of me, getting angst up a little more, a little tighter in the pit of my stomach. Get out of work. I'm the secretary of a meeting that night, and I have to get some styrofoam cups for the meeting. And I'm in a hurry because I'm meeting a new guy there, and I don't want him to beat me there. I got to get there before he gets there. So I'm hurrying to meet the newcomer, sort of on a mission from God. Get to the grocery store, angst up. I'm pushing time a little bit. And I get in that packet of styrofoam cups, I get in that 12 items or less line. Behind a woman that's got 15 items. I've counted them twice. I just wanted to choke her. And I thought about doing this. What I really wanted to do, I wanted to go back to the back of the store in the office and bring the manager up here and make him count the items underneath the 12 item or less line so he could see the travesty that was going on in the store. But it just slowed me down, and I'm in a hurry, so I just tighten it up a little more, tighten that spring, push that stuff down, get out of there. Getting out in traffic. Now I'm hurrying. Now I'm trying to race over there. I want to beat this new guy there. Get behind some little old lady driving 5 miles an hour below the speed limit. I just felt like I was going to lose my mind. I just remember I had this insane thought of flooring it, smashing into her, pushing us both into oncoming traffic. We'd probably be killed, but she would see. I don't do nothing. I just tighten that spring up a little more. Get to the meeting. My newcomer's already there, and he's sitting, of course, in the back of the room. Get out of there. Get up here. Made him sit up in the front. Lay the literature out. I can lay some literature out, too, I'll tell you. Lay that literature out. Waiting for the right. As I'm laying it out, I'm preaching to the new guy, telling him what he needs to hear. I'm waiting for the perfect chairman and co-chairman to come in there. The guy, I want two people that are going to really bring a powerful meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous to my new guy. I got the right couple guys, these guys are going to do a good meeting. I know it. I told the one guy, I said, listen, we're not going to read chapter 5. We got a new guy here. We're going to read chapter 3. He said, yeah, okay, whatever. They start the meeting, and they're reading chapter 3, and I can picture my new guy getting a year, mentioning my name. And they start to meet, and they say, the chairman says, does anybody have anything to start us off? And some guy, I don't know who he is. He's out of treatment, I suppose. Raising his hand, starts talking about shooting heroin. Well, some old guy who doesn't understand anything about drugs interrupts him and cuts him off in the middle of his share and says, you can't talk about that here. This is Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, now some other guy jumps in and is pissed at the other guy saying, hey, you can't tell him what to talk about. He can say, hey, talk about whatever he wants to talk about. And it's like the meeting from hell. It's like all of a sudden the whole vision of the newcomer mentioning my name in a year is just like evaporating into the wind. And I'm sitting there and I'm getting aggravated. The AA has become stupid. I'm the only one here that cares. I'm the only one here that sees anything. And by the end of the meeting, I'm just so fed up with all this crap and this isn't even AA. This is stupid stuff. I'm ready to quit Alcoholics Anonymous. I throw the literature in the bag. I storm out of the meeting. I go home and I'm just fuming. I've been conditioned like Pavlov's dog to call my sponsor. And he says, wow, read page 60 through 63 of the big book. And I go to the book, and here's what I see. That I'm like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the customers at the store, the other employees, the people in the grocery store, the people in traffic, the people sharing in the meeting in my own way. If only things would stay put, if only people would do as I wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including myself, would be pleased and life would be wonderful. Isn't it odd? Isn't it odd that I could be that way all my life and until that moment I can't see it? I think I'm above average intelligence. I'm not an idiot. I couldn't see that. Chamberlain used to say that all the time. You can only see what you can see when you can see it. I could not see I'm this guy until the pain and frustration and angst and anxiety of being the way I was matched the message and principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, and there I am, right there on the page for the first time. And I'd read this dozens of times. And I couldn't see myself here. I sponsor guys that read it. And they don't see it. They can't see it until the day they can see it. And what an important day that is, because until I really found myself in this part of the book, the rest of the program is sort of an academic exercise. You know, when you think about it objectively, why would I have to shrink me to seek a new manager for my life if I secretly suspect that my managing is not perfect, but it's okay? I don't need a new manager. If I secretly suspected with the right set of principles and going to meetings and a sponsor, I can run the show, then I'm probably going to run the show. And until I run it into the ground, until I have what we used to talk about back in the 70s a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous, the second surrender. You know, I come to Alcoholics Anonymous beaten half to death by the bag and the bottle. I'm surrendered by it. And then in my abstinence, sometimes years into sobriety, I'll be surrendered by life itself. I'll be surrendered by an absolute failure at trying to wrest some satisfaction and happiness out of this world. And it'll usually be born on the bodies of broken relationships and lost jobs and children. Sometimes it's with children that I've damaged in sobriety. I know men and women who get sober and their untreated alcoholism hurts their kids more than it hurt them when they were drinking. I've heard Alateens talk about who have parents in AA who talk about tragic stories about how they liked their mom better when mom was drinking. She was a little bit fun. She got sober. Oh my God. How come mom's not drinking and she's more miserable than she was when she was drinking? Some of us keep secret lives behind our own doors. Alcoholism has its way with us. So what do? Well, we're convinced of these things. The book goes on to say some beautiful stuff. It says, in trying to run the show and trying to make these arrangements, our actor, me, may sometimes be quite virtuous. Earlier in the book, it said some of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore. Didn't help much. I've known some amazingly principled people who died of alcoholism. And trying to make these arrangements may be sometimes quite virtuous. You may be kind. I may be considerate. I may be patient. I may be generous. I even may be modest and self-sacrificing in trying to get my way. On the other hand, I may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest, but as with most, we're likely to have a combination of varied traits, a combination of these traits. And I am here's the kind of guy I am. Because I've always been a little overly conscious of how I look to people and what you might think of me. So in this effort to get my own way, I'll always try the first approach. I'll always try to do it with kindness and consideration and affection, and I'll even be modest about it. I'll be self-sacrificing. But if you screw with me, I'll bad rap you behind your back. I'll sabotage you. I'll try to turn people against you. I'll build a case about what a terrible person you are, and I'll tell everybody. Because isn't it really all about me and getting my way? I'm like this obsessive mind has a certain thing, and it gets it in its crosshairs. And it has to be that way. And I make things global. It's not because there's a part of me that understands selfishness, so I don't want to be selfish. So I will say things like I've had things in AA on committees where I've done some horrible, like nasty little things just to undermine other people, and I justify it by making it global. That you're going to ruin Alcoholics Anonymous. This isn't about me. This is about the welfare of millions of newcomers. I have to blow it up to justify, make it global, and it's really just very pathetic and selfish on my part. I just want my own way. And that is the crux of the matter. That's why in step 3, it says will first. We made a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of God. I think will is the crux of the problem. I'll tell you something, sound crazy. I believe this. I think if I could totally and 100% abandon my will, I think I could keep my life. Because I ain't going to mess with it. I have no opinion of it. I have no judgment. If I have abandoned my will, then I'm just the guy who has, like a child, I have no opinion of nothing. It's the will that puts me in conflict with life and with God, with you. It is the crux of the matter. What usually happens, the show doesn't come off very well. I begin to think life doesn't treat me right. I decide to exert myself more. We're funny people. When nothing else, the number one tool in my toolkit is a hammer. And if all you got's a hammer, everything looks like a nail, doesn't it? It all looks like self-will, Decide to exert myself more. It becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, this play does not suit me. Does it ever? Did you ever notice, even when you get your way, it ain't quite right? Even when you get that person that you really want to love you, and they seem to be loving you the way you want them to love you, and it's just something about it, it's like, ain't really enough. I think I'm the black hole of love. You know what I mean? You can love me, and I'm just like, is that all you got? You know what I mean? I have a vacuum inside me that I cannot fill up by acquisition. And some of us are very fortunate we learned that the vacancy fills up when it's going this way, never when it's coming this way. That it doesn't fill up by acquisition of anything. It fills up by subtraction, by giving. Doesn't even make sense, does it? That you give what you have away, and your vacancy's filled up. It almost makes more logical sense that you'd fill your vacancies up by acquiring things to put in them. But I think all we ever do is stretch the holes out bigger doing that. That is a dog that can't be fed full. The more you feed it, the hungrier it gets. So what? Still the play does not suit him. He becomes angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is my basic trouble? Great question. What is my basic trouble? I'm sober a while. I'm a mess emotionally. I'm not happy. All the bedevilments on page 52 are true for me in my abstinence. I'm going to read these. What a great description of untreated alcoholism in the middle of page 52. Having trouble with personal relationships. Well, you can't get them to mind, really. We couldn't control our emotional natures. Man, I'd do these roller coaster rides. I was a prey to misery and depression. Depression is symptomatic of untreated alcoholism. It's not necessarily a Prozac deficiency. We couldn't make a living. 9 jobs, 4 years. Or maybe even if you have a job where you're secure in it. And no matter, did you ever notice it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's never really enough. I don't know how to live. I can't make a living for myself, no matter, and it's independent of financial or material gains. I had a feeling of uselessness. Oh, God, I remember that. Looking around, and these people in AA just seemed like they knew what their life was about, what everything was just, and it's like, what am I going to be when I grow up, if I'm ever going to grow up? What's life about? Everything seemed aimless and useless to me. Feeling of uselessness, prey to misery and depression, etc., etc., etc. That's all in me, and that's all me sober. Sober. That coupled with restless, irritable, and discontent. Other than those things, I really am very fine, thank you. Jeez. What is my basic trouble? Am I not really? I mean, really, you pull away all the prop and all the pomp and all the circumstance. Am I not really a self-seeker, a vacuum filler, a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Am I not a victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if I only manage well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players in this play of life that these are the things I want? Don't you get it? Don't you see this is the right way? And do not my actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of a show? Am I not even in my best moments a producer of confusion rather than harmony? Our actor is self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. And Bill goes through a litany of examples here that have one thing in common. He talks about the retired businessman lolling in the Florida sunshine of the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The ministers sighing over the sins of the 20th century. The politicians, the reformers, who are sure all would be utopia if people just straighten up. The rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him, or the alcoholic who is in detox and is locked all and has lost everything and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, or our self-pity. The thing that they all have in common, in every single case, can you feel the lonely, anxious separation through their judgment, through their will? The politician whining about the bad state of the nation, the minister sighing over the sins, the old timer, the bleeding deacon in your home group was saying things like, well, nobody really does AA right anymore. The people who separate themselves from others through their own judgment. You know, I think over the years I've come to believe that in order to stay in Alcoholics Anonymous, you have to understand how you leave Alcoholics Anonymous. Because there's a road out of here, and you got to be very clear with yourself what that road looks like so that you're not on that road. How do people leave AA? I'll tell you what I see. I think they leave one judgment at a time. You go, next thing you know, you're going to your home group, and everybody that shares, you just find a little fault with it. Just a little fault. You don't tell them because you're a big guy. But you know what's wrong with everybody now, don't you? And you literally, I think guys like me, and I've been on this road, it's a frightening road. We literally will judge ourselves right out of Alcoholics Anonymous. Spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, I've left AA and I'm still sitting in the rooms. I'm still sitting in the rooms. And it happens through exactly what they're talking about here. And so what is the problem here? Well, it says selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. The root means that it all comes from this. That below and underneath my obsession with alcohol, my obsession with drugs, my obsession with money, my obsession with sex, my obsession with being right, my obsession with getting my own way. Isn't there a grandfather obsession of them all? Isn't the bottom line, if you peel away all the layers of the onion, down at the core, aren't I first and foremost obsessed with myself and my feelings and my well-being and my relationships and my comfort and my security? Selfishness, self-centeredness. That I have a consciousness that primarily is concerned with, focused on, absorbed in, and centered on myself. Now, sometimes it looks like it's centered on you because you might affect me. But I ain't concerned with you unless you affect me. That's why you'll hear crazy people that don't want to do service in Alcoholics Anonymous, don't want to do 12-step work, and they'll say things like, oh, I do a lot of service with my company that I own. I do a lot of service with my kids. I do a lot of service with my family. And that's all noble. That's all living what you're supposed to do. That's being responsible. It's not the same. You know why? The key word is my. It's self-service. If you can say it's my, you're actually inadvertently serving yourself. Because it's your kids, it's your family, it's your company, it's your finances. It's a noble, responsible thing to serve, but it's self-service. Alcoholics Anonymous, we're talking about serving people that can't do nothing for you. First thing the ego says is, why would I do that? Why would I do that? Because what's the big clamoring of the ego? What about me? What's altruistic stuff? Yeah, it's nice. But what about me? What about me? That's the great clamoring of self. Me. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. And if that's true, the next couple lines make perfect sense. If you're obsessed with yourself and getting your own way and your security and your comfort and your relationships and you, then you're a driven person because there's a lot of crap to worry about. And it says that we're driven by 100 forms of fear. Everything that has to do, if I'm the center of the universe, there's a lot of stuff to worry about. Driven by 100 forms of fear. Self-delusion. We are crazy with self-delusion. You know, treatment centers started back in the 70s using the word denial. Well, it doesn't say that in the book. The word denial is not used in the first 164 pages. If it was denial, it would be manageable. This is worse. This is self-delusion. This is psychotic, wishful thinking. It's that life is a certain way, and I imagine that it needs to be this way for me to be happy. So I start imagining that it really is this way when it's not this way at all. It never was this way, never will be this way. It's this way. It's this way. It's not this way. And then I get pissed because it's not the way that I want it to be. We do it in relationships all the time. I sponsor a lot of guys that do this problem over and over and over again. You get sober, you don't even know it. You're driven by a vacancy. You're driven by some kind of emptiness inside you. And what's it drive you to? It looks like after a while you start imagining that it's a relationship-shaped hole. It kind of feels like it, kind of seems like a relationship-shaped hole. And so you're desperate to fill it. And if you were to do an honest moral inventory and to see what kind of person do I need to hook up with? What's going to be a good match? Well, maybe you get 10 qualities. Okay, I need somebody. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, that's compatibility. Well, I'll find someone who has one of the 10 qualities, usually good sex. I'll find a person with one of the good 10 qualities, and then I imagine that under my tutelage, they'll develop the other 9, and then I get angry at them for not having the other 9 qualities. Who is the nutcase in that equation? It's me. They're not professing to have all this stuff that they're not even interested in, that I think they should. I am the crazy person here. The person and people who argue with the truth get sick. Well, that truth is there this way. I'm imagining they need to be this way, and then I'm arguing with the way they really are, and I'm getting sick in the process. Right? Self-delusion. Psychotic, wishful thinking. And driven by self-pity. Most hideous of all. It is so hideous. I have been a victim of self-pity all my life. I get angst with all the things I want and the frustration of not getting my way, and I just kind of implode. And I don't even like the word self-pity. I prefer the word depression. You can go to a bar, as I have done, getting out of a place with a diagnosis of clinical depression, and explain that to people in the bar, and they'll buy you a drink for clinical depression. They don't buy you no drink for self-pity. You can get really interesting medications for depression. You can't get crap for self-pity. And it's really self-pity. I like to dress it up, but it's really just this amazing, overpowering self-consumption. I just get me in my dissatisfaction and my vacancies just all over me. And I literally smother myself with myself and my own emotions. And I've been diagnosed as clinically depressed. Those are the moments in my life, and also when I was suicidal, where I was the most self-centered. I was the most self-centered. Self-pity. Driven by these things, what happens? Well, you're driven by this stuff, so I'm trying to get my own way. I'm trying to fix myself. And driven by all this stuff, I step on the toes of other people. I don't even know I'm doing it. Because all I can see is trying to make myself better. I just get these blinders on, and I'm charging ahead obsessively into my life, trying to arrange things to suit me so things will be good. And I don't know that I'm stepping on your toes. I don't see it. I don't see it work in trying to get things set up so it'll be a certain way so everything will be easier, that the other employees who don't go along with me, how I treat them when you thwart me, how I treat you like you're stupid. I don't even know I'm doing that, do I? How I discount you, how I give you the cold shoulder, how I step on your toes. And what happens? Well, you retaliate. You do the same thing we all do. If somebody steps on your toes enough, they become fair game. You screw them. And they retaliate. And sometimes the book says they'll hurt me. Seemingly to me, because I'm an idiot and I can't see past myself, seemingly without provocation. That means I don't know why are they shooting at me? Why don't they like me? And then here's the promise of step 4, that we will invariably find that it's somewhere in the past I've made a decision based on self, ego, me, that has put me in that position to be hurt. The book says, so our troubles we think are of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. And the alcoholic, I love this line, the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will. Why did they have to say that? Can't they be nice? Why don't they just say, Bob, sometimes, Bob, occasionally you got a little problem here. No, Bob, you're off the charts. That means if you took the whole human race and measured their self-involvement, I'm over here in the extreme category. I'm in the corral where they segregate the extreme examples of self-will and run right. And then it says, though you usually don't think so, do you? Nobody in the corral for the extreme examples thinks they should be there. Right? Because of the amazing ability to justify. And, earlier in the book, it says that we're bodily and mentally different from our fellows. And it warns us about this delusion that we are like other people, or we're presently going to be like other people, has to be smashed. I am bodily and mentally different. I am an extreme example and always will have the propensity for extreme self-involvement and extreme self-will. I am not like other people, even though on a good spiritual hair day, I go out in the world, nobody knows it. I don't know what I feel. I fit good. I'm productive. I ran a huge company, was very successful, very prominent in the community. Nobody knew I was as weird as I, on a bad day, knew I was. But I am. I will always be that. My daughter is not an alcoholic. My daughter and my sister both are. Sometimes my parents must have thought aliens dropped me off because I came from a really good family, I tell you, but I was weird. And my daughter is not an alcoholic. My daughter is one of the naturally intuitive, principled, lit up, proper action, automatic person that I've ever met. She just has a good heart, a good soul. She always chooses. Her internal compass is amazing. It's amazing. There have been times I wanted her to sponsor me. It's just, really and truly. A little while ago, she'd ended this relationship that was a big deal to her. And her and I are very close, and we're having dinner together. And she's telling me, she's very sad over this relationship. She cried a few tears over it. And I said, it just happened. And I said, Kate, we kidded around. I said, you're going to have to maybe you just have to kiss a few frogs to find your prince, and it's going to be okay, and trust God. And she said, I know, Dad, I know. And I get with her next week. We're going to have dinner together, and I can't wait to get with her because I know she's in this tough space with this relationship breakup. And get with her, and I said, Kate, so how's it going? She said, it's going good, Dad. I said, the relationship breakup. Oh, she said, I've kind of moved on. I'm sort of over it. I'm going out with somebody next week. It's fine. I said, you moved on? Oh, Kate, you couldn't have possibly gotten enough mileage out of this yet. She thinks I'm silly. But I'd have been a month or two. I would have milked every ounce of drama out of that I could have possibly milked. She's too healthy for that. She just goes on with her life. But she is not an extreme example of self. She's not extremely obsessed with self. She's very here and very naturally in here. And her life is evidence of that. She does things naturally. I have to go to a meeting every day, have a sponsor, pray, and work steps to just get in the zip code of the action she gets naturally, right? That's amazing. Oh. So we're extreme examples. Above everything, that's a lot. Above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. This altruistic program is a program of self-abandonment. We know something painfully. We know that our obsession with ourselves and making ourselves happy and fixing ourselves has all but destroyed us. And my God, what it's done to the people around us. So we're trying to step away from ourselves. We're trying to abandon ourselves to God or to whatever will take us. Because some of us don't believe in God when we get here. That comes later for some of us. Above everything, we must be rid of the selfishness we muster. It kills us, and God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without His aid. This, again, is a dilemma. Alcoholism, it's such a deadly illness because contained within its nature is certain dilemmas. And the dilemmas is that I'm in a spot where even if I awaken enough to get what I need to do, I can't do it. Some of us, I bet you in this room, have gotten to the point where you get it one day. You can't drink anymore. You must not drink. And yet you couldn't stop. You get to the point, I must stop being obsessed with myself. I must stop being so selfish and self-centered. But I can't. I can't. It is the natural default position of my consciousness. And that is the dilemma. I have to have God's help once again. I couldn't beat the bottle without Him, and I can't beat myself without Him either. I had to have God's help. This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. So that's something I can do. I can't get rid of self without His aid. I don't have the power. But I can quit actively pursuing the action of playing God. Isn't it odd? I played God a lot in my life. I didn't know it. I used to go to my sponsor when I went through a period, when I was brand new. I talked to him every day because I was very surrendered for a period of time. And then the ego grew back like a bad tumor slowly, and I became self-directed again. You know what it's like to be self-directed? That's when you don't want to go talk to. If you have a problem, you think you're going to fix it yourself, or that it's going to just go away, and it doesn't go away. And so what happens if you're like that is you accumulate a lot of angst and turmoil, and then you're beaten to your knees, and then you got to go to your sponsor. And now you're a mess emotionally by the time you do that. And I'd go to my sponsor, and I'm a mess. And I'd start unraveling this ball of twine that is me, and it's and all kinds of stuff. And it's all petty little stuff. I got resentments. There's people in AA that are drinking 4 cups of coffee and not putting any money in the basket. I notice these things. There's a guy in AA who's trying to sell Amway after the meeting in the parking lot. There's 13 steppers in AA. Sexual predators, my sponsor said, you're just pissed because they're getting more action than you are. Ooh. People in AA they're just lying in meetings. They're phony, You know the ones that when they share, you can hear the angel wings flapping in the background, They're not really like that. And I go to him and I tell him about the people at work that aren't doing their job. And I'm working hard today, on and on and on. He'd always say the same thing. You got to quit playing God. I wouldn't say nothing to him, but I just look at him. I don't know what he means. I'm not playing God. I'm reporting accurate information here. I'm not playing God. I was playing God. I had created a state of separation between me and other people by climbing up onto a throne of judgment and picking you apart and picking you apart and picking you apart. And why do I do that? Because of a delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world by managing well. And one of the ways I do that is if I can mentally tear you all down and find enough fault with you, maybe I can justify me. Maybe I'll level the playing field. And maybe I won't be so. I won't. These squirmy, undefined, vague feelings of uneasiness inside me, maybe they'll be put to rest if I can grandize myself enough at your expense by finding enough fault with you. Maybe I can rise up. Pathetic, isn't it? Done it all my life. No wonder we're so alone. No wonder I am so driven by loneliness, because my ego separates me from you in its judgment. Alcoholism really is. Ego-driven people are very lonely people. They're right about everything, but they're very lonely people. So we had to have God's help. This is the how and the why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter, in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the father. We are his children. Most good ideas are simple. And this was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we passed to freedom. And one of my favorite promises, and I'm going to mention this and we'll take a break for lunch. The top of page 63 is the effects of taking this seriously. If you're really truly convinced of ABC, of step 1 and step 2 in your innermost self, and you head out with a sincere intention to carry out this decision, which basically means you're going to start working the rest of the steps to clear enough of you a way to carry it out. Here's what's going to happen to you. And it's amazing. It says all sorts of remarkable things will follow. You'll have a new employer. You know who you think you work for? You don't work for them. Behind your boss is another power. There's a power behind the curtain. You have a new employer, being all-powerful. He'll provide what you need. He will never, ever lack for anything you need again. He'll provide everything you need if you can do 2 things. Pretty simple things. Stay close to him. I turn my consciousness to God every day. And I'm diligent with my sponsor and the disciplines of step 11 and top of page 86, the self-examination and the spot check inventories in step 10 to clear away the stuff between me and God so I can keep close to him. And I turn my consciousness towards him every day. Some days I'm just praying into the air because I'm disconnected. And other days I'm hooked up. It doesn't matter. I take the actions of a person wanting and yearning for that homecoming. I take the actions. Some days I'm connected, some days I'm not. And the other thing I have to do is perform his work well. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to read this book to figure out what that is. There's a new default position that's being presented to us as a form of action. And we did blah, 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 and we turned our attention to someone we could help. We did, we looked for someone that we can help. They call it our primary, number 1 above everything purpose here. Helping people like ourselves. Chamberlain used to say it best. He said, it's not my job to worry about me or take care of me. I must forget me and go out and help God's kids. It's God's job to take care of me. And just to the extent that I forget myself and help his kids, will he take care of me. And he pays well. I have a great life. And it's almost proportionate to my level of self-abandonment and service. I have gone through periods of self-service in sobriety, self-will binges, self-serving binges. I am lucky I've survived them. Tough stuff. I don't reap anything of any value from that, except more angst and more separation. Our new employer. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. That's almost hard to believe, isn't it? I mean, come on. You go through your whole life concerned with yourself, worried about yourself, wondering about yourself, thinking about yourself. And that's going to happen less and less and less. And it does. And it's an odd thing the way it happens. I have just the propensity and the same inclination to obsessive self-involvement and thinking about and worrying about myself today as I had 33 and a half years ago. But here's how my day goes. I wake up to the phone most mornings. Some guy I sponsor says, I need to talk to you. Okay. I wake up thinking about him. I get off the phone, I say some prayers, I start to do work into my meditation. I'm in it about 15 minutes, the phone rings again. Just about the time I was getting done with God and I could get to the important stuff, me, the phone rings again. There's some guy on the phone. Oh, you'll never believe what she did now. Oh, yeah. I get off the phone with him, the phone rings again. I have something I wanted to read, so I pick up after talking to the other guy, I pick up the phone, reading some spiritual stuff, and phone rings again. And I realize, oh my God, I got to get in the shower. I got a detox commitment. I got to be down there before 12:30 because I don't want to be late. Important. Be early. Jump in the shower. I'm running across town thinking about the new guys in the detox. Wondering if so-and-so's there. I heard they just checked him in. He'd been around AA for years. I heard he's back in detox again. I go down there and I spend the whole hour and a half or so that I'm there, the time before the meeting, the time during the meeting, time after the meeting, talking to people, talking to guys, trying to reach out, care about them, trying to give them something that's going to encourage them to come out of there and do what I've done. And I get done out of there and finally, some real quality time thinking about me. And now we got cell phones. It's terrible. These relievers of the bondage of self will hunt you down and find you on a cell phone. And guys will call me and I go through my whole day. And isn't it odd that a guy who's basically self-centered and self-obsessed and self-absorbed and self-focused by nature spends most of my waking hours thinking about others. And it's not because I've become good or altruistic. It's just that I've immersed myself in the structure of this way of life, where God works through you and through the principles and the actions we take here to relieve me of the bondage of self. Let's break for lunch, and we'll be back at 1:30.